The Lord be with you. Reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Jesus went across the Sea of Galilee. The large crowd followed him because they saw the signs he was performing on the sick. Jesus went up on the mountain, and there he sat down with his disciples. The Jewish feast of Passover was near. When Jesus raised his eyes and saw that a large crowd was coming to him, he said to Philip, "Where can we buy enough food for them to eat?" He said this to test him, because he himself knew what he was going to do. Philip answered him, 200 days' wages worth of food would not be enough for each of them to have a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, the brother of Simon Peter, said to him, "There is a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what good are these when there are so many?" Jesus said, "Have the people recline." Now there was a great deal of grass in that place, so the men reclined, about 5,000 in number. Then Jesus took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to them, to those who were reclining, and also as much of the fish as they wanted. When they had their fill, he said to his disciples, "Gather the fragments left over, so that nothing will be wasted." So they collected them, and filled 12 wicker baskets with fragments from the 5 barley loaves that had been more than they could eat. When the people saw the sign he had done, they said, "This is truly the prophet, the one who has come into the world." Since Jesus knew that they were going to come and carry him off to make him king, he withdrew again to the mountain alone. The Gospel of the Lord. There are some situations that seem beyond our ability with the coat. The challenge feels too great to be faced. Some people go into depression. They get overwhelmed. Others face it, pick it up, and go on. Now, today's gospel offers us an example of apparent powerlessness. Jesus is faced with a very large crowd of hungry people in a deserted place. They all need to be fed, and the resources to feed them doesn't seem to be at hand. We can hear how overwhelmed the disciples felt by their comments. Philip let Jesus know that 200 days' wages would only buy enough for each to get just a little. Andrew, on the other hand, seems like a little bit of an optimist. He saw the little boy there with 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But he says, what good is that among so many? You know, today there's people here in our diocese that work for aid agencies like Catholic Charities and Be Concerned. They often find themselves in a similar situation. The huge need outstrips the resources available. Other groups, St. Vincent de Paul, the AQ, the inner city schools are constantly in need. So much need, but it doesn't seem like there's enough to go around. But you know, in those situations, the workers are always ready to do what they can do. Whatever resources they have at their disposal, they dig in. They don't despair. They just tackle the situation as best they can. They look to Jesus to respond, to take that little bit and make it enough for all. You know, Jesus saw that. In some ways, that small boy with his 5 barley loaves and his 2 fish was the key to feeding 5,000 people. Now, I can't imagine how that happened. But it's clear that it was the small boy and his loaves that played such a vital role. It was just enough food that would have maybe made a meal for a small family. But this little boy was willing to part with what he had, to share what he had, and he handed it over to Jesus. And Jesus was able to work with that small boy's generous gift to feed everyone. One small boy made a difference in feeding the multitude. One person's generosity gave Jesus the opening that he needed. It's through small, willing gifts that something powerful can still happen. Today, we have with us here Mrs. Jamie Schroeder, who's come to talk about ACU, the Alliance for Catholic Urban Education. I'd ask that you please give her your attention while she shares with us this worthy cause. I will mention we will have a second collection after communion today for the summer missions, which the ACU is part of. And I'd ask that at that time you be as generous as possible. Jamie.